And now we are to our fan favorites of shout-outs and rants. So we will start with you, Mr. Rosen. Do you have a shout-out and or rant for us?
I would be sarcastic to call it a shout-out, so I will say it is a rant. Tom, in an earlier podcast, you referred to me as a gray beard, and I'm growing that beard in support of my New England Patriots and their playoffs aspirations. I'll try to deliver this without too much commentary. Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Antonio Brown has been suspended 3 games for violating the NFLPA COVID-19 protocol. It seems that Brown was among 3 players who misrepresented their vaccination statuses, and a former personal chef of Brown said that earlier this month, the wide receiver had obtained a fake COVID-19 vaccination card over the summer. So, in the wake of Aaron Rodgers and other professional athletes that are struggling with COVID and trying to tell the truth and trying to game the system, here's to you, Antonio Brown, brought over by Tom Brady, the GOAT, to be part of that receiving corps in Tampa Bay. You warm my heart, Antonio Brown. Out.
Matt Kelly.
Tom, I'm going to stick with the world of sports, but spin it around to a shout-out to the Women's Tennis Association for having the guts to stand up to China and cancel their upcoming tournaments and other commercial deals with China over the case of their women's tennis player, Peng Shuai. Peng had been, I guess, disappeared, is the word to use. I say had disappeared or had been disappeared because I suspect that maybe this was done by force, where she had accused a senior Communist Party official and government official in Beijing of sexual assault, and then lo and behold, she kind of just disappeared from social media, from the internet, from the world for weeks and weeks, as I understand it. And finally, she did resurface to say all is well. A lot of people think that that is not true, that she was forced to put on a brave face by the government in Beijing. And the World Tennis Association had the guts to say, you know what, we don't believe it. We stand by our player, Ms. Peng, and we are not going to do business with China, which is, as they correctly said, a corrupt and thuggish and authoritarian regime. Everybody knows this. Everybody who works or deals with China in corporate America knows this too. They just don't say it very often. I am struck, actually, comparing the WTA's guts and stance here against China compared to Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan, who casually made a joke the other week that he thinks J.P. Morgan will be around in 100 years, and that is more than he could say for the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party hit the roof over that rather flippant comment. He probably should have been more judicious in his words generally, but although I believe he is right. But then almost immediately Jamie Dimon apologized, not once but twice. So he folded like a house of cards. Many other businesses have folded like a house of cards when dealing with China. And lo and behold, the World Tennis Association, the Women's Tennis Association, is not folding. They are sticking to their guns. It's probably going to cost them a fortune. But this is what sticking to your core values actually looks like in practice. So kudos to the Women's Tennis Association for standing up to China. Glad to see that they're doing it.
Jonathan Armstrong, do you have a shout and or rant for us today?
I have a shout out for the European Public Prosecutor's Office. Who they? Well, they are a new agency that has been set up, as the name suggests, to prosecute fraud, embezzlement that involves EU funds. Now, it's a somewhat confusing position. The European authorities have had a body called OLAF that's meant to have been prosecuting fraud in the European Union for many years, and some in Brussels say that it does nothing very slowly. But in contrast, the EPPO only came into existence on the 1st of June this year, and they got their first conviction. So for a bribery and corruption prosecution, that's pretty quick work. They've said that they have already opened 400 investigations into fraud and embezzlement across the EU. And their first conviction is of a Slovakian mayor who now has the pleasure of 3 years in a Slovakian jail for falsifying documents to get financial support from the European Social Fund. So, well done to the new, tough, prosecuting kid on the block.
And I'm going to join in for my first joint rant and shout out. I'm going to rant about Major League Baseball. Why? Because Basic Labor Relations 101 says if you're going to lock somebody out, do it when there's a reason to do so, i.e. to stop work. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're more than 2 months from the start of spring training and 3 months from the start of the baseball season. So what did the billionaire owners do? Well, they locked out the millionaire players. You want to put some pressure on people? How about a lockout before spring training? Or how about a lockout before the season starts? In the history of labor relations, Major League Baseball has made probably 4 of the top 5 bonehead moves of all time. The last strike we had was 26 years ago in 94 and 95, and here we are again. My shout out, however, goes to Houston Chronicle sports columnist Brian Smith, who said of the lockout by the owners, why don't you take this opportunity to fix baseball? Baseball is broken. It is now number 3 in the top 4 professional sports in the United States. It needs a serious reset for the 2020s and beyond. It ain't about money. It's about the quality of the game. So thanks, Brian Smith, for reminding us the game's broken. The owners broke it. They need to fix it. Karen Woody, do you have a shout out and or rant for us?
I do have a shout out. This weekend I had the opportunity to go to Indianapolis because my son is really into cars, and so we did a tour of the Indianapolis Speedway. And I have to say, my shout out is to that entire institution. It was so fascinating to get a lap around the track, look at the museum, and realize how much history is there. I have to confess, I'm not into race cars or into racing, but it was a fantastic excursion and one that left all of us very happy. So my hats are off to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the fantastic tours they give.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed these shout-outs and rants. I hope you will check out the entire episode of Everything Compliance, which will premiere on Thursday, December 9th on the Compliance Podcast Network.